LGBTQA. There are many Blacks and Latinos who fall within this community, which adds more variables and more trauma-informed and more historical trauma. So for the record, let's just say what this is, because a lot of people are just like, okay, what does that one stand for? What is this? So lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer questioning, asexual, or allies. Lesbian, female, who experiences romantic love and or sexual attraction to other females. Some terms that may be offensive. Dyke, bull dyke. Other things to know, not all lesbians identify as either butch or femme. There's this need for people who are outside of the community to get them to name who or what they are. Yeah, but does that mean you're this or does that mean you're that? Why do I have to be one or the other? I just am. Like you said, my name is, why do I have to check a box? A gay person is attracted primarily to the members of the same sex. Terms that may be offensive: fag, faggot, fruit, fairy. Some things that you should know is that although it can be used for any sex, a gay man or a gay woman or gay person, lesbian is usually the preferred term for women who are attracted to women. A bisexual person is someone who is sexually attracted to both men and women. Some terms that may be offensive: AC/DC. Some other things you should know: bisexuals may also be referred to as bi. A transgender person refers to people who do not identify with their assigned gender at birth or the binary gender system. They may have been born or classified as male, female. You were born male or born female, but they don't really identify with that. Some terms that may be offensive: she-male, he-she. And now someone else told me another one, shim. Other things to know. So this is going to include transsexuals, cross-dressers, gender queer, drag kings, drag queens, and others. So some transgender people feel they exist not within one of the two standard gender categories, but rather somewhere in between, beyond, or outside of those two genders. It's I am who I am, and that's all that I am. Get to know me. Stop trying to label who I am. Queer, an umbrella term sometimes used by the community to refer to the entire community. An alternative is that some people use queer the idea of labels and categories such as lesbian, gay, bisexual, etc. So sometimes they would just say queer. Other things to know: the word queer is an in-group term and a word that can be considered offensive to some people, depending on the generation, where they live, and their relationship with the word. Because sometimes people can be called queer and the intent is to offend. Questioning. So for some, the process of exploring and discovering one's own sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, that's basically, I'm still figuring it out. I'm still figuring it out. Other things to know: it's best to be patient with those who identify as questioning, because they're still in the process of figuring themselves out. So stop trying to force them to pick one, and there may be more than one, or none, we don't know. Asexual, a person who generally does not feel sexual attraction or desire to any group of people. There's approximately, it's in the millions, like 1 point something million who have identified as asexual. If you go to asexuality.org, there's a whole community. And at one point, they were kind of in the shadows, invisible, and they're now linked to the LGBTQ community. And the A can also, other things to know, unlike celibacy, celibacy is a choice. I am choosing not to do this whether I have the desire or not. Asexuality is a sexual orientation. So asexual people have the same emotional needs as everybody else. They want to feel intimacy, meaning a heart-to-heart connection. But they don't want the physical aspect of it, but they're just as capable of forming intimate relationships. A can also stand for an ally. So an ally is typically a non-LGBT person who supports the rights of the community. Terms that may be offensive, fag hag. Sometimes they refer that as someone who hangs around someone who's gay a lot. Other things to know, that there's still people within the community who can also be allies. You don't have to be part of a community to want to help fight for rights for them. So there are some people who don't want to openly fight because out of fear of being called someone in that community, which to me is not an insult anyway. That's probably the very reason you want to fight for the rights of this community. Historical context. So the Enlightenment era. Same-sex behaviors, same-sex behaviors was a serious crime at one point, punishable by death at one point. They called it buggery, sodomy, male-dominated sexual reform movement. All of this happened, it was like the late 1800s. So when I'm talking about the historical context, I'm trying to give you some years associated with it. The gay liberation movement. So there was just a more radical approach in the fight for acceptance, accepting the community for who they are. They are citizens, they pay taxes, they contribute, and they started really fighting for the right to be accepted. There was a lot of unfair treatment by law enforcement, which led to the Stonewall riots. I don't know if you're familiar with the Stonewall riots. So there was a very specific area in New York that was an LGBT, at the time it was just LGBT community. There were a lot of bars, and they were getting hit a lot by raids and by the police. Well, this particular incident, the name of the bar was called the Stonewall, and this was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. It was like, no more. And a lot of people started fighting back, and it is known as the Stonewall riots. But that raised a really big awareness within the community. The classification of homosexuality as a mental illness. At one point, homosexuality was considered a mental illness. So imagine being in that community and being told that simply who you are means you're mentally ill. So now we have the LGBT rights movement. This community was associated with the contraction of the HIV virus. At one point, it had a whole bunch of different names attached to it. The gay disease. At one point, it was called GRID. It was like gay-related immune deficiency. There was just a lot of degrading acronyms. And they just associated, if you have AIDS, you're probably gay. It was illegal to get married. And people were unable to openly serve in the U.S. military. So let's look at this macro system as a whole. So an overwhelming percentage of Americans, about 87%, say that they know someone who is gay or lesbian, compared to 61% who said so 60 years ago. But now let me say this. That 61% probably did know someone. The persons weren't out yet. The percentage was likely higher. So even today, when someone says, I don't know anyone who's gay or lesbian, you probably do. Maybe you're simply not aware that they're part of the community, because it's not something that most will literally go around announcing. When they're comfortable with themselves, this is simply who I am. I don't need to to put it out there like that, for the most part. If we look at the historical context, we can draw the conclusion that with this community, it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. The economic impact that it's having on our economy is amazing. Toward the end, we're going to get to the rise of these communities. Right now, we're going to focus on the historical context. Political figures and structures have either completely denied rights for them or completely ignored the needs for a whole lot of years. Historical bouts of violence and discrimination against those who were open with their identity. And IPV cases within the community were simply not taken as seriously, partially because law enforcement didn't even know how to handle it. So it's not like they had a lot of experience with same-sex or same-gender disturbances. Before, remember, it was just take the guy to jail, and then it was, okay, let me find out if it's the male or the female. And now they're in the community, and some of them don't even know how to identify who it is that they're talking to. So they just don't have a lot of experience with it. So IPV within this community is just simply not getting the attention that it deserves. But we can educate them. In American culture, feminine gay men and masculine females are treated poorly compared to masculine gay men and feminine lesbians. Did I lose you, or do you need me to say it again? You got it? Okay, excellent. In the exosystem, classism, racism, and other forms of discrimination still happen amongst its own community. Gender roles have a very unique variable within the community. So there is a group called the National Friendship Movement. This is an LGBTQA organization. And in interviewing them, when there's two males in a relationship, it's a little difficult in defining the IPV. Because if you have two men who are not in a romantic relationship and they get into a physical altercation, if one hits one, they just hit back. That's just defending yourself. But when you're in a romantic relationship, when we're talking about gender roles, it's defined by the people who are in the relationship. So if there's two men and there's IPV happening, it's like, well, wait a minute. And this is how it's viewed from the outside. It's like, so wait a minute. So which one, this is something they tell me they hear all the time. So which one's the woman? They're both men. They're both men. And sometimes they hear, okay, so if you two get into a fight, who goes to jail? So this is all part of not being able to understand the dynamics of the community. So when we're talking about religious settings, families, and peers, about 3 in 10 said they've been made to feel unwelcome at a place of worship or religious organizations at some point in their lives. The first thing that generally comes to mind when someone says that they're gay or lesbian is sex. That's the first thing people want to know. Okay, so how do you do it? So how does that work? Without taking into account that these are people with emotions and feelings, and they have true relationships with people. There's more to it than that. And what if they're asexual? That's not even a factor. Those who come from a particularly religious family, when they come out to their families, some of the things that they may hear, you better not be gay. I'll beat it out of you, or I'll pray it out of you. I'll pray it out of you. I'll beat it out of you. I have to save you from hell. It's a sin. You are an abomination. Yeah, they say that one. Well, it's in the Bible. They hear, how dare you be gay? The devil's got a hold on you. In the Black church specifically, being gay is more tolerable if he's singing in the choir or he's the choir director. But if he's part of clergy or the congregation, then it becomes problematic. Friends or family, sometimes we'll dismiss this community as it's just a phase. It's just something you're going through. Don't worry about it. We'll pray that right out of you. So imagine now being someone in this community. You've come out, you've gone through this whole process. Your family turns their back. Some of your friends turn their back. You go to your place of faith, the one place where you felt safe, and then you're told you're an abomination. And you're going through IPV. Where does that person go? There's a lot of dynamics associated with being in this community, and I'm glad that we're opening the conversation to get a better understanding. Just start with the understanding. Remember, the healing is on the other side of vulnerability. So forget what you thought you knew about the community and really work to simply understand it first. There's no one size fits all. The coming out process, whether you're 21 years old or whether you're 60, there's still that developmental process of coming out. They have the same type of fears. Will I be accepted? Am I really part of this community, or is this a phase? They question themselves. They question how they're going to be received. So also, when you ask questions of someone within the community, and I'm sure some of you have experienced this in your own community, they ask you a question, your answer obviously represents the whole community. They'll get that. It's like, okay, so wait a minute. Does it mean this? Does it mean that? They don't know everything about the community because they don't know everybody in the community. I don't know every Black woman, but I get asked a lot of questions. They go, oh, okay, so Black women do this. I don't know. Y'all laughing, but I'm serious. Y'all get that? I'm so serious. Like, I don't.